Welcome back to Velsheen Rule. It is time now to take a look at your money, money, money. New numbers show many Americans are in dangerous financial positions, despite the president's constant boast of the greatest economy ever, including just a short time ago in the Oval Office saying the economy is doing fantastic. But according to a study released by the New York Federal Reserve, more than 7 million Americans are behind on their car loan payments by 90 days or more. That is 1 million more people than the previous high back in 2010, as the country was beginning to recover from the greatest recession we've seen. And the volume of those loans is higher than ever, topping out at more than $584 billion worth of outstanding debt. If those loans begin to default, which happens at the 90-day delinquency mark, it could have a harsh effect on American workers. According to analysis done by Brookings Institution, almost 128 million of the 150 million American workers studied in a 2016 relied on their car or they carpooled to get to work. Losing that transportation method could cost some Americans their actual jobs, something that could then cascade through their personal lives. According to Bankrate.com, nearly a third of all Americans, that's 29%, have more credit card debt than they have in emergency savings. At least 18% of Americans have no emergency fund whatsoever. And the rate of credit card debt to emergency savings is higher than it has been in recent years. A perilous situation to be in, as economic indicators are predicting a recession. And Allie, no one is saying it is the fault of the president that there could be a recession.
No.
This is where we are in the cycle.
Yeah, it's just it's interesting to know, given that where the stock market is, given how low unemployment is, given that we've seen wages going up, given that we've got GDP growth, why it is we're seeing an increase in people who have more credit card debt than savings and behind in their car loans. Let's bring in John Harwood to see what this actually means. John, you know, we are all tea leaf people, right? We look at what's going on and say, is this a harbinger of something dangerous coming, or is it just another sign of the inequality that we've got in society?
A tale of two Americas, which we've had for years.
Yep.
I think both. Look, when we talk about how good the economy is, we're talking about a particular set of indicators, talking about growth, talking about what's happening to unemployment, what's happening to stock values, that sort of thing. But underneath that, we know, given the statistics you just cited, that a significant swath of Americans are simply not getting ahead and struggling to stay above water. The Federal Reserve also showed last year that 40% of the country could not come up with $400 if they had an emergency, like their car going on the fritz. Their credit cards were maxed out. They didn't have the cash. So it is a danger sign. And the further you get away from that financial crisis that we had in 2007, 8, 9, the more people get relaxed and take a little bit of risk. And now we're seeing some of that come back to bite them.
Okay.
And maybe bite all of us.
Right. Back to the president's comments this morning, and they're not new. These numbers that we just talked about are stark contrast of what the president talked about today. Was a Gallup poll, which shows that nearly 70% of Americans think they will be better off financially next year at this time.
But both things can be true, right? Both things can be true. You could be okay and thinking it's getting better. You could be badly off and thinking it's getting better. So the two don't mean the same thing, right, John?
Well, exactly right. And of course, Gallup earlier in January came out with a poll showing rising pessimism about the national economy. So people give different kinds of answers when they're talking about the nation's economy versus their own personal finances. But even in the poll that the president was citing, 69% of the people said that they think they're going to be better off a year from now. But you still had something in the range of 1 in 5 saying that they think they'll be worse off. And that speaks to the people at the bottom rungs of the ladder that we were talking about, who are squeezed and struggling to keep up. And that's what's driving a lot of the conversation in Democratic presidential politics about what are people going to do for them in terms of minimum wage, in terms of health care coverage, all of the things that people need to raise their families.
John, when we think about the impact of these numbers, are they could they be underlying causes of a slowdown? Do people start feeding off of this stuff? You start getting your car. I mean, and 90 days is when it becomes a problem, when you can't keep up on your car. Do we, you know,
or
you never know
what the result of a slowdown.
Or they're the result of a slowdown, yeah.
Well, I think both. I don't think we're likely to see a cascading effect of the kind that we saw
with
in
houses
2008,
in 2008.
when you're talking about the big numbers involved in people's mortgages, and then security debts go unpaid, and then you have this potential default of major institutions. I think this is a smaller scale problem, but it's a real problem for them. And when you have an economy, a recovery that's now 10 years in, it doesn't take a whole lot of misfortune to tip the balance and finally end that recovery. We know that the growth is slowing down now. Some people predict minimal growth in 2020. With Mark Zandi, the independent economist, thinks the chances are higher than 50-50 that we'll be in recession by the end of 2020. And statistics of this kind show some of the danger and could propel that forward.
But let's just say for a moment on this auto loan debt, for example, knowing that it's growing or it's coming, is there anything lawmakers can do? I mean, they're not in a position to say you're forgiven, but I'm just thinking back to the financial crisis. If August of 2008, suddenly the government woke up to the subprime crisis.
But the world is falling apart because of it here. The auto loans, it's a bad situation, but the worst that's going to happen is people will lose their cars, which is really serious for a whole lot of people in this country. But it doesn't have the cascading effect on the national and global economy that the housing crisis did. I think that was what you're saying.
In theory, Congress could do something, but I wouldn't expect it. You know, we've had debates for a number of years about the growing scale of student loan debt and calls to do something about that. It's very difficult to get Congress to intercede on an event of this kind. It was very hard to get people mortgage relief in 2008, 2009.
Still controversial.
Yeah, so I wouldn't expect action on this, but I think it's definitely something that lawmakers are going to be watching and concerned about.
Yeah, and economists are going to be watching. John, thanks very much. John Harwood is CNBC's editor at large. The kind of thing that you don't want to be looking at 8 months from now, 10 months from now, saying, you know, that was the first signal that.
But you can say that about everything.
Sure, yeah.
Hindsight.
It's 2020. Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.